women have a much harder time than men staying monogamous in long-term relationships because of the way that we're turned on is different.
That men create connection and stuff through actually speaking and talking. So when women engage in sex really soon, for women, there's also the chemicals that come up and stuff like that that create attachment. Whereas for men, it's like actually, which is also another myth that people don't realize, they actually get connected through being able to feel safe and vulnerable and like sharing about themselves. Keeping a relationship fresh, you want variety and also consistency. Consistency is rooted in love, and then variety is rooted in building eroticism and like the mystery. So I think maybe that goes back to like also building some mystery around it.
The one thing that I think is fascinating is that women have a much harder time than men staying monogamous in long-term relationships because of the way that we're turned on is different. And so it was just really interesting to see the science behind it and also the stats on women in long-term monogamous relationships get bored more quickly and easily, which is the complete opposite of what society tells us.
It makes so much sense. And I see how it's been painted differently because I think what I've observed and experienced is that women get bored, but because of society and how much shame there is on them, perhaps they don't exercise actually cheating, but they get resentful and not happy. And then the man, you know, contextualizes like, oh, she's nagging me or she's like controlling me or she's boring. And then the man goes and exercises that because for men, I was taking this Tantra class from one of our friends and she said something that was super fascinating. And she said, sex to men is like marriages to women. So like men feel about sex in the way that like women traditionally, like obviously I have different feelings about marriage, but
right. But you're speaking to like the security factor and the like having that need fulfilled of being like chosen.
That and also that men create connection and stuff through actually speaking and talking. So when women engage in sex really soon, like for women, there's also the chemicals that come up and stuff like that that create attachment. Whereas for men, it's like actually, which is also another myth that people don't realize, they actually get connected through being able to feel safe and vulnerable and like sharing about themselves.
Really?
It's also very interesting.
So there's a little bit too, like not having sex on the first date, like waiting to build a connection just to tie in something that society would tell you.
Yeah.
But no,
I think there's desire. Like I think building mystery and desire, which goes back to, I forget what book this came from, but my partner and I were talking about how like keeping a relationship fresh, you want variety and also consistency. Consistency is rooted in love, and then variety is rooted in building eroticism and like the mystery. So I think maybe that goes back to like also building some mystery around it.
It sounds like something from maybe Esther Perel.
It is actually, yes.
That sounds like Esther. Absolutely. Those are the two basic human needs, number 1 and 2, that are like so foundational. And we need both. So it's beautiful to have that security. And that's what I was thinking of when, you know, you were saying like how sex is to men, how marriage is to women. And it's like, it made me think of something else. I was just recently listening to another podcast. I think it's called Awaken Love by this woman, Angel. And she talks about how women and men actually are getting needs met when they first start to have sex. And a lot of that need is to be like accepted and chosen, right? And to have that security built, like you are my person, I'm going to choose you. And sex constantly reinforces that. Eventually, when you feel completely secure and seen and chosen, that need is full. So sex then isn't fulfilling any need for you, unless you create a new need for that sex to fulfill. So it's, I think, another reason why women get bored and how you need variety, but also what are the other needs? And like one of them is like enlightenment, right? Or like growth. And if your sex can inspire like altered states of consciousness, right? You spoke about tantra, like for sure. Or if it can inspire growth, which I think having multiple partners does,
yes,
then it's such a home run for a long-term relationship because you're getting so much more out of it than just like the connection. And now I know I'm like chosen and I have a place in this tribe, right? Or this community. So it's really fascinating when you start to think about sex in that way.
So speaking of differences between men and women, in terms of what is your experience, you feel, and how is it different for Pasha maybe in terms of like growth or healing that occurs personally as a result of the open arrangement?
Yeah, I mean, we've both worked through like a lot of things. Sexual shame, jealousy. I think even different traumas, like different childhood traumas, like not even sexual things, but the stuff that we all go through. I'm trying to think of something that I want to share, but well, I know for us, when we first started dating and having sex, like we were both working through like some stuff, and we used to really love to like go hard. Like, and I think there was just a lot of like maybe inner child stuff that just wanted to come out in a way of like a more dom sub relationship. And I think that in a really healthy way, we were able to go through a lot. I also know that for Pasha, sometimes to like really step back and give up control it has been very healing for him, you know? And so like having such a safe place, because it's not often like you're not just meeting people out or dating somebody. Well, maybe you are, where you're going to completely surrender. A guy like him, he's, you know, very powerful. He's very direct. He's very successful. And so I think in our relationship, we have like so much safety and boundaries created. And there's so much trust that he's been able to do that with me. And, you know, with another partner of ours that we love, where it was like, okay, he allowed himself to get tied up, which was beautiful. Incredible. It was like so hot. It's really funny because
I'd like to have a chat with him about that.
Yes, please do.
To hear his experience as a man.
Yes, I think he would love to talk about it, actually. Maybe he'll come and talk about it on the podcast, but I have to out myself because this is really bad. Okay, so we met this girl, Amanda, at a party that we recently went to, who I can't wait to connect with. And she teaches these classes on kink and BDSM. Yes, and I'm like, I need to take your classes because I messed it up. Okay. So here my partner is trusting me and doing all the things. And we've never taken a class, so we don't fully understand, I think, is as much as we over communicate in that way of being like dominant and submissive. And I wasn't asking all the right questions, and it was going really well. But then I had a paddle and I hit him too hard. like on the inside of his thigh. There's no such thing.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know, it was so bad. It wasn't even like on his butt. It was like on the inside of his thigh. And he was like, nope, done, untie me. He was like, we're never doing this again. And we did eventually, but this wasn't that long ago. And thank you for retrusting me. But I think it's a really funny story, but actually it's important, I think, for people listening too, when you want to enter into these more like scenes or like play around with kink, like to really know what the boundaries are. And obviously we have that trust and we can forgive one another, but in the moment you're being so vulnerable, especially for him. It's easier for me to be submissive. But but
it sounds like it's like creating a lot of balance because he's so masculine. And so it allows him to become a little more like stepping into his feminine. And then for you, it allows you to take the other role. So,
take charge. Yeah. Which is nice.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Let's stay on the sex topic because I love it. But in terms of that, how do you feel about the difference between men and women, or your experience of how sex is perceived? Like just, is there shame, excitement, guilt? You know, how that gets wrapped into and is different for men and women as they're growing up.
Well, I think because we kind of started chatting like before we started rolling, but I just have to say you hit the nail on the head. Like when you ask a man about sexual shame, he's like, huh? Like, what do you mean? Sex for them, I think, in my opinion, in our society, for a boy, for a man, sex is exciting. It's a conquest. It's something, and I'm generalizing. Okay, so please hear this because I know that a lot of men and boys have experienced sexual trauma and shame, and it's not easy for all of them. But I think in our society, the majority would dictate that this is for you as a man. And there's still so much of an undercurrent, and in many parts of our culture, an overcurrent of that a woman's sort of job is to fulfill a man's pleasure.
But like a certain way, not too much.
Right.
Not this. Like,
yes.
I was in a discussion with a few women during that Tantra class I was sharing with you about, and like every extreme of shame was presented. Like one woman felt shameful because it was too much, and then one woman felt shameful because she wasn't doing it enough. So it's like, we don't even know like what the standard is really. I will share something though. I think because for men, and I'm not saying that it's like easier for them because it's not. I think the challenge is because sex gets viewed for men as this thing that should be for them celebrated and stuff, that there is more isolation for them within their own gender. Like they don't have girlfriends to talk to about this. And within them, it's only a point of pride and like they're pressured to perform. And I think this goes back to what I think would really heal the world is if men were actually encouraged more to talk about their feelings and not repress stuff. And I think that actually causes just as much discord as like the patriarchal things that are imposed on us as well. And I don't want to leave that off the table.
Yeah. That's actually so beautiful the way that you shared it, and gives me such an insight too, as someone who like wants to do this work and speak about it more. So I feel like there's a lot to learn there. And it's so true. I mean, I can't imagine for a moment, and maybe Pasha, because, you know, he's my closest, you know, man in my life, and he is vulnerable in those ways. But to think, and I don't even think he would, to think of any other guy that I know going to a guy friend and talking about like an intimate problem, it's not even something I could fathom.
There's multiple past partners where like I would be like, hey, I just found out from so-and-so's wife that this like big life thing happened. And I was like, you just went golfing with the husband. They're like, oh yeah, we didn't talk about that. I'm like, this seems like the one thing you should talk about. Like,
right.
You know? And I think like our society does that. And there was actually an article that was either in the New York or Atlantic that talked about that in the pandemic, because there no longer have been sporting events and like a lot of drinking events for men to go to, that there's a ton of men that have found out that they want more intimate, closer relationships. And I was connected to this entrepreneur a few months ago who started something called Tether. And it's actually an online support community for men. Meant to be able to connect. So I hope our society move towards both genders being more vulnerable and honoring each other and all that stuff.
We definitely need more of it. And you're right. I think as women, we have been the ones who have like gone through more, you know, shame. And we're also painted with, I think, in these types of relationships. And I say painted with like, because it's what society would dictate. We should maybe be more jealous of our man who's going out rather than, you know, the other way around. There is room for us to open up and say, well, what are men going through? Because we can actually only grow and evolve like as a sex as much as they do alongside us. So it's really important, to spur both.